3, 2. I think we're on the air. Hold on, I think so. Oh, there we are. All right, Earnestly Podcast coming here with second time in the podcast. Fellow Philly sports fan, also podcaster, 1/5 of the 3 Count Thursday crew. I'm gonna get this right the first try, Matthew Muehliesen. Damn, almost got it.
So close.
Damn it. Almost got it. Dude, where's that awesome fridge of yours, by the way?
It's in my garage.
Dude, you have probably the best fridge on the internet.
I do what I can with that. It's been a lot of years of trial and error to get that perfectly set up so that it has the right collection of specific brews for specific tastes.
And it's all yours, right?
It's all mine. Yeah.
Why doesn't partake in that either?
So on the door of the fridge, there's wine that she partakes in, but the rest of it is for me.
So beer, soda, juice. I thought I saw Yoo-Hoo there too. Is that Yoo-Hoo there also?
There's Yoo-Hoo on there. Yep, we've got some hard seltzers. There's anything for any taste within the beer fridge. It's all encompassing.
I like your shirt, by the way.
Appreciate that.
Like my shirt? No,
not so much.
we are playing. Actually, we are playing the second game of the series right now.
I know. Well, Phillies will need another 8th inning comeback here. It looks like.
Yeah, when we shock the Mets with another one, that's what they do. You know, it's the torture of being a Mets fan. Hey.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we have a lot to talk about baseball in the future. Let's talk about what's the current right now, and that is the NBA playoffs starting in a couple of days. I actually just learned today that the play-in tournament is actually separate from the playoffs. In other words, any stats accumulated in the play-in tournament does not apply to the playoffs. So it's literally its own entity.
I like that.
Yeah, which is good. I actually no stat padding here, but you are obviously a avid Philadelphia sports fan, avid Sixers fan especially. They are the 4th seed right now in the East.
Correct. Yeah.
Raptors. But you listen to the national media, you would think that this team's a little trouble. I don't know how the city feels about that. I don't know how you feel about that. Where are you right now in the Sixers entering the playoffs?
I'll tell you. I mean, every year the Sixers are in trouble going into the playoffs. Every year the Sixers are the national media's pick to be the first round upset. We saw it against the Nets. We saw it against. I mean, there were not as many, but there were some that were picking the Wizards last year. We saw it against the Heat when the Heat started getting back into the playoffs a few years ago as well, when Dragic was kind of leading the charge there. So every year when the Sixers are the higher seed, that they are always the media's favorite to be. This is your clear upset. Now I don't know if that's going to be the case this year with Brooklyn facing off against Boston. I think that's probably going to be the sexier pick for the media to be saying, here's your upset. But 4-5s is typically a toss-up anyway. So I wouldn't necessarily say in trouble, but I think of all the teams that the Sixers could have gotten in the first round, the Raptors are obviously behind the Nets, the second most difficult team that we would have to face.
Yes,
in round 1.
Yeah, especially the way the season ended. Toronto really ascended. They went from the play-in situation to not just get out of the play-in. They made it, into the 5 seed.
Yeah.
Late. And no one's really talking about Toronto because it's Toronto. No one cares. It's there's no guys there that really stand out really on a national point of view. But they are dangerous. But to me, this comes down to James Harden really. Now, the difference between James Harden here in Philadelphia versus Harden in Brooklyn, short stint, of course, and then Harden in Houston is the fact that he is clearly the second fiddle behind Embiid.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if
he was the second fiddle last year too. I would say behind KD.
I guess you're right to some degree. But I don't know. I feel like we're kind of overrating a little bit. I mean, I know Harden, in my opinion, is under the most pressure probably of any player. But could I argue that the dynamic of him being the second guy as opposed to the number 1 guy may actually be helpful for him as he enters these playoffs?
It might be. I mean, at this point, I don't think we've seen Harden give 100% effort, honestly. I think we've seen flashes of it since he came to Philly. And a lot of that is still probably the hamstring injury that's been lingering since last year in the playoffs. Um, so I don't know that we've seen him play to his full potential just yet. But I think that him not having to necessarily be the guy just yet. And he probably will be called upon to do that a few times in Toronto. With the athleticism that they have on the wings, he's going to have to take over a game or two. I would say we can't put it all on Joel or on Maxey. So I think that he will be called upon to do that, but I don't think he has been just yet.
Right. So where are you on the series right now with Toronto? Like, how do you feel? Because I have I made my prediction on the podcast I did earlier. I still got Philly in 6 games at least.
I think that's a fair assessment. I don't like to throw out too many predictions just because I've always felt that it comes back to haunt me. But I don't think this will be an easy series either way. If it goes quicker than 6 games either direction, I would be surprised. I would be genuinely surprised if either team won it in 4 or 5.
No, I totally agree with you on that one. How much pressure, in your opinion? We had a discussion about this on Twitter a few weeks back, discussing Doc Rivers. I've had a narrative of Doc Rivers for the last 5 years. I've said, dating back to 2016, I wrote an article about this on my blog back when, during his last year or two with the Clippers, that he was overrated and that he's been living off that 2008 Celtics title for a long time.
Like the rest of the team, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then you add the fact that you have, the meltdowns and, a couple of times, it was 15 against Houston. It was, I think it was like 16 against the Thunder. I think it was, whatever it was. And you
19 against whoever. Yeah.
So you have all that. He comes to Philadelphia. We know Philly sports fans are not forgiving. This is easily top 2 hardest market to please. You said it's tough. They are tough. What is the barometer for Doc Rivers? What is the ceiling for Doc Rivers in terms of saying, okay, it's a successful year? Like if he makes it to the conference finals, is that good enough for fans? Second round? I don't know. What is it?
I don't know. I think if he makes it to the conference finals, he's safe. I don't know that is necessarily enough for Sixers fans, but at the same time, with as stacked as the East is, if the Sixers make it to the Eastern Conference Finals against a Brooklyn or a Milwaukee and it goes 7 games, I think that probably buys Doc Rivers another year. I don't know necessarily that it should. I think that a lot of the fan base, from what I'm hearing, some of the players are kind of at their end with Doc Rivers. I think that kind of the rotations that we're seeing from him and his being adamant that we see DeAndre Jordan, that we see Paul Millsap playing minutes at the 5 and backup of Joel. I think that's kind of been telling in terms of writing being on the wall. If he doesn't go past round 2, that would be it, just because at that point it's purely out of stubbornness. I mean, you can't tell me that DeAndre Jordan is the ideal matchup for anyone,
right,
in any minutes, unless it's garbage time.
Yeah, speaking of Joel, obviously the biggest talk of the year, the NBA MVP race. To me, I mean, I've been an NBA fan 3+ years, and this is easily the tightest race I can remember in a few decades. There's no clear cut, favorite. You can really argue 3 guys can deserve it, maybe even 4 guys deserve it. I went back and forth.
3. I think it.
Yeah, I think it's 3. I think it's 3. You can.
4 is pushing it.
Yeah. People making a late Luka case. I see why. I don't think he missed part of the year, so I think that's a little too much there. It's really a 3-man race, and honestly 2. It's just 2. And I've gone back and forth between Jokic and Embiid. And up until the last month, I was saying Jokic. And after I think I changed my pick.
Okay.
I'm going to Embiid because one stat I did not account for it. I just realized yesterday. You know, we were talking about this during the Harden trade, you and I, and I said that the Harden trade may actually hurt Embiid's candidacy because now he has more help from an elite player.
Yeah.
In fact, Embiid's numbers went up actually when Harden got here.
Mm-hmm.
So while Jokic has had
fantastic season, and you and I talked on Twitter yesterday. I had a tweet that kind of took off. And once the Celtics fans kind of started chiming in, that's when I muted it. But I think there were a good amount of people that missed the point of my tweet, and as you've said, this is the closest race that we've seen in an MVP race in a long time. And so for me, when we're looking at who gets to vote on this, I can probably look down that list of the 100 people that get to vote and pick out at least 10, probably 12 to 15 voters who are putting Joker in first place simply because they don't want to vote for Embiid. So when you're getting to the point, sorry, your mic cut out there.
Why is that, you think?
I mean, for the purposes of the Ringer and anyone associated with Bill Simmons, that bias is obvious. I mean, you have the Denver Post who gets a vote. They're not going to put Joel Embiid over Jokic 100%, and I wouldn't expect them to. So this isn't necessarily a knock on the hometown writers, more so a knock on the Ringer and Bill. But when you have people, and KD even said it today, right now, Joel is just not as likable with the media as Giannis, as Jokic. So when you're already getting 12 people, we'll say 10 to be fair, 10 voters that are 100% no chance going to vote for Embiid simply because it's Philly, simply because it's the process, for whatever reason it may be, then that already, to me, is a disservice to the award. And that was the point of my tweet. If Joel is in Los Angeles, if Joel is on the Heat, if he's on another team not associated with the process, not having a dozen writers who have been part of ESPN programming for years, knocking the process, calling Embiid a bust, they don't want to backtrack. They don't want to say that they were wrong. So those votes are going to go to Jokic. And again, if you're voting for him based on the season that he's had, 100% based on that, that's fine because he's had a fantastic season. It 100% is a coin flip. And this is coming from a diehard Philly fan. The point of my tweet and the point of that comment was just to point out that when you already have some voters who are 100% biased against Joel for reasons that are off the court, then that already tarnishes the award for me.
And that sucks because you want to vote on merit, not just on what you think it is. Like I said, Jokic, not having Murray for our year, not having.
He's overcome a lot, but at the same time, but he's the sixth seed,
Yeah.
and you talked about it. Look what Embiid did the first half of the year before the trade deadline. He didn't have his number 2 guy in Ben Simmons. Tobias barely showed up. We've seen an outbreak from Tyrese Maxey, but no one was counting on Tyrese Maxey coming into the season to be a clear-cut top 2, top 3 player on that lineup. You were thinking Embiid and Simmons, and then you have Harris, who's a great player, overpaid, but still a great player. And then you had a lot of question marks. And Maxey certainly asserted himself out of necessity, I would say, more than anything else. But he has not had the supporting cast that I think a lot of people are thinking that he has.
And I think also the Simmons drama was a lot more challenging. At least in Jokic, I'm not knocking Jokic and saying that his situation wasn't tough, but at least
absolutely tough. Yeah,
you knew coming to the year, okay, he's not going to be here probably for most of the year, if not the entire year. You knew that when training camp started, Murray's going to be on the shelf till at least February, March, if not longer. Okay. Yeah. You knew, now obviously poor Jr. getting hurt didn't help.
Right.
The Simmons thing was different.
Yeah.
It was an ongoing fluid situation. Is he playing? Is he not? Then he comes to the camp only to disrupt practice. And then he's on the bench and now he's sent home. And then you ask him questions. Embiid questions, okay, well, how do you feel about this situation? Meanwhile, Embiid is balling, and holding, And me,
and at the same time missed 2 weeks due to COVID. I mean,
yep,
if he has those 10 games, then who knows what his numbers look like. He won the scoring title being on the bench for at least 15 games in the season.
ultimately, I went MB for two reasons. Number one, the thing I told you about his numbers increasing with Harden there, so that didn't actually hurt him. Actually, he played even better. But also, I went back to my old rule I've had for years prior to 2016, where my criteria for you win MVP number one is your team has to win at least 50 games. That's why I knocked Kobe back in 2006 for not getting it, because yeah, he had a fantastic year, but they won 45, 46 games. So my benchmark has always been 50 games. Now, I kind of laid off a little bit because of Russell Westbrook, winning the MVP 2016, triple double, all that. I kind of went.
That is what it is, yeah.
I mean, but my criteria has always been you have to win at least 50 games to at least get you into the conversation. And
yeah.
So at the last minute, I said it's got to be Embiid.
Yeah, and again, some of the arguments that I'm seeing, you can break down. Again, stat-wise, Jokic is right up there, better in a lot of categories, not as good. I mean, if you're saying who do you want to defend the last possession of the game, are you taking Embiid or Jokic? You're taking Embiid.
Sure.
If you're saying who do you want on offense, I think that's a coin toss. Jokic might get you the assist. He could probably get you the basket. Embiid's probably just going to go for the basket. So 50-50 right there. But some of the other factors that we're seeing in this, like you mentioned, the setbacks of the overall team, both of them played through some tough stuff this season. In terms of, the overall record, people are saying Denver only finished 3 games behind what the Sixers did. Which conference was more difficult this season?
In the middle, definitely the East.
100% the East, right? I mean, you look at every team involved in the playoffs, and that's 1 seed through 10 seed with the play-in. None of those teams are below 500. The New York Knicks would have been a playoff team with their record in the West this year. That's how bad the West was. Which is and there's great teams in the West, obviously. Memphis, phenomenal. Phoenix, phenomenal. The Warriors, phenomenal. I mean, 1 through 6 in the West, those are great teams. But then after 6, that's a massive drop off. Like, I'm looking at Minnesota and the Clippers playing right now as the 7-8. Neither of those teams has a chance. No chance of winning the title. Zero.
No, I agree. And that's my old rule, like I said. And again, both guys had guys out, but to me, the Embiid situation was more volatile, way more volatile. It wasn't even close.
And for me, for Jokic to have back-to-back MVP seasons, he needed to be 100% above and beyond Embiid this season. He wasn't. Right. Like, to win MVPs back-to-back is a huge deal. So you have to show that you were 100% the MVP. Last year, absolutely, he was. And that's where my tweet, slight exaggeration, I said multiple MVPs. He would have won 1 MVP this season. But at the same time, like, it's not a discredit to what Giannis did, to what Jokic did, lesser extent to what Luka did this season. I think that Embiid just had that much better of a season between everything. And when have we seen a big man dominate scoring like this? You can talk about free throws all you want, but we haven't seen it since Shaq, a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it again. I think I told you this last year in the podcast when we spoke on the podcast. So once a year, we do. So record.
Coming up on the annual time, yeah.
Right. I think Embiid, just on pure talent, is the most talented center I've ever seen play basketball. When you consider his skill set, what he can do. He's a little bit of Shaq, a little bit of Olajuwon, a little bit of, Dave Robinson. I mean, he just
only because it's both sides of the ball. If Jokic is a better defender, then again, it's not a conversation. I would tip my cap and say he deserved it. But we've seen him get taken out at the end of games in a close affair to put in a better defensive center. That's not what you want to see out of an MVP.
Even though Jokic had a better year, I'm always on the case of Embiid is a better player, no matter how you slice it. Like, Giannis is the best player in basketball, to me. Okay? He's not an MVP this year, but he's the best player in the league. playing close.
Yeah.
He made another ascent even while Jokic and Embiid had great years. So no, I think it's Embiid, man. I think after reviewing everything and seeing some of the numbers and he I won't say he separated himself, but again, 50 plus wins, added more, actually scored everyone up after Harden got there. Like I said, that's a big deal. So that's let's do the eulogy real quick on the Lakers. So blame.
Yeah. Pour one out.
Who's to blame? Blame pie.
And it's tough for me to say this because of who he is and how important he is to the league. It's on LeBron. LeBron put that team together. It's not on Vogel. It's 100% not on Vogel. I don't think Vogel, if you asked him before the season, do you want Russell Westbrook on this team? I don't think he says yes.
I don't think he wanted Westbrook at all. I think that was, I think.
And I don't put it on Westbrook either because if you say, hey, do you want to leave this shitty Washington Wizards team that's clearly rebuilding, or do you want to play in front of the lights in LA? He's going to take LA.
Yeah,
it's not his fault. And even if he could have vetoed the trade or whatever, he's not going to. When you have an opportunity to play with LeBron, with AD at this point, 2 years removed from a championship, you're going to do that.
Yeah.
But this all has been assembled by LeBron, and I don't think it was necessarily health obviously played a factor in it. If everyone's healthy, they're probably at least a playoff team. They're not going to be a top 4 team.
At least a play-in team, at least.
Yeah, they'll at least be at the 9 or 10 spot at the very least if everyone's healthy. But I would say probably closer to 5 or 6 if everyone's healthy. But you have to know everyone's aging. They're at the point where you can't count on every single person on that roster to play a full. I would even say a 72 game season. So you have to know that going in, and we've seen the Lakers just kind of deplete assets to build this roster of big names, and it worked in the bubble, but I think that was just kind of a fluke, unfortunately.
Yeah, obviously LeBron gets blame. I think the front office should get more blame, especially too, because ultimately they call the shots. He could have.
Do they though? Who's saying no to LeBron?
He dropped his no trade clause. He can't do anything.
Well, any front office that's trading away LeBron James is the New York Knicks don't even make that stupid of a decision.
No, but you could have gotten Buddy Hield, and that's what they wanted. And Ron wanted Russ. No, Ron gets a ton of blame for what happens here. But I think it's a lot of Vogel gets some blame, but at the end of the day, it's he's a scapegoat.
Yeah,
he's a scapegoat.
Yeah, 100%.
And
that's why I don't put a ton on the front office, because you can't say no to someone of LeBron's caliber at this point. At this stage in his career, especially with the front office, they've won the championship. At this point, their main purpose is to sell out home games and make money. And you're not doing that if LeBron James is not on your roster, because who else is going to be in LA?
Right. And I think that's what you do. What priority number one on the menu is, I would say, obviously try to see what you get for Russ.
Yeah.
It's not a good fit.
Who's taking on that contract, though?
The only reason why that contract may have even some value at this point is
expiring.
That's the only reason why. Maybe Indy takes that contract. Who knows? But beyond that, do you consider trading Anthony Davis?
Once LeBron is gone, I feel like AD is kind of what you have left, similar to the Cavs situation when Kyrie and LeBron left Cleveland. They dug their heels in with Kevin Love, and that hasn't borne them any fruits of that labor. But I think I look at AD and I see him in a similar boat. We see Russ leave this season through trade like Kyrie left, and then we see LeBron take his talents somewhere warmer and sunnier than LA, whatever that may be for the swan song of his career. And we see AD be in the Kevin Love situation in Los Angeles, I feel like.
But the thing about AD though is that this is who he is. We're 10 years in. This is who he is, and this is how he's going to be going forward. And I don't think he'll be better than he is now.
Mm-mm.
So I think at this point it's
And I mean, the injury concerns have always been a thing for AD. I mean, people talk about Embiid's injury concerns, and that's valid, but Anthony Davis has been just as injured, if not more so, than Embiid
yeah.
throughout his career.
Embiid has shown the last couple of years that he's been very very durable,
Mm-hmm.
more durable than we thought he'd be. These couple.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this year, the longest stretch he missed was due to COVID. If not for COVID, he's probably played 70 games at this point, 75 even.
by the way, breaking news: Mets win 2-0. Anyway, let's talk about wrestling.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 38 in the books. Did you enjoy the show?
Top 10 Mania.
I said the same thing too.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it had to do with expectations coming in. I had pretty low.
Right. Absolutely. I thought it was going to be a D-F show.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, I wasn't excited for night one at all, honestly. I thought night one was going to be an absolute dud. 100%.
Night one, the first hour was shit.
Yeah.
It was pretty shit.
It was. There, and again, I thought it would be an F. It was probably a C plus. But then night two just built upon that. Like the last 2 hours, aside from the Charlotte match, were a lot of fun on night one.
Austin, of course.
Yeah. I mean, if you're ending with Austin, I'm always gonna pop for that. But I mean, I feel like they built off of that when we got into night two, and I don't think a lot of fans expected that.
And that's what's strange because like my thing was going through the process is that okay, night one was really really good. There's no way hell night two can match this because you had the Cody Rhodes come back to the company night one. You had obviously the fantastic Becky Bianca match. Which by the way, the last time we did a podcast was literally the week after Bianca lost the title to Becky in the 28 seconds Raws.
Right.
So back here later, and now we're talking about Bianca getting a belt back. We got the payoff, and then
match of the night, yeah, match of both nights.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have obviously the awesome stuff at the end. You don't think that night two can match up to that, and it did. It did.
Yeah. Yep. It absolutely did. Yeah. The Knoxville match I think was a lot more fun, and I knew it would be fun going in, but I thought it was a lot more fun than I was anticipating. The McAfee match was phenomenal. I mean, he stole the show with that. The main event for me was a miss, just because we all knew it was going to happen, and it dragged on a little too long, and we didn't really get any excitement out of that. But I think that between that and the dud New Day match that they probably should have just left off the card if that's what they were going to do, those were the only two matches that I felt were like the weakest part of the show.
I feel like the highs of night two also especially made the main event bearable.
And that's fair. I mean, it wasn't a bad match. I wasn't like upset with it, but again, I mean, we all knew Roman was walking away with both belts. Like that.
He should.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you don't put those belts on Brock at this point. So the fact that we didn't really see anything like exciting, there were no turns, there was no returns. It was just kind of a straight through match, and it was 14 minutes, which is 6 minutes too long for a Brock Lesnar match in 2022. That was just the only part that I would say was a drawback.
Yeah, I agree with you that. Yeah, the McAfee match was fantastic. My wife hated the Sami Zayn Knoxville match because she hates Johnny Knoxville. She actually came on take 3 because we were talking about on our WrestleMania review, and then Jim was on the show, and I told Jim, my wife hated it. She goes, well, she's wrong. So me being a dick, I went and called her out. She came into the studio and started ranting on the show about.
See, my wife is the exact opposite. She loves Johnny Knoxville, so that made it for her.
I love the match. I thought Sam was a great sport, honestly.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, you could tell he was having the time of his life. You could tell Cole and McAfee calling that match were just having an absolute blast calling the action for that match.
I think the hard part now is that because WWE really blew their load. I mean, they put out all the stops. They put out between the Austin surprises and Cody coming back and all the other things that happened. How do you top that next year?
Yeah, I mean, and they're in LA too, so it's got to be The Rock, right?
Yes, that's what I was saying. That's the only thing having.
That's the only thing. And at this point, you feel like Roman has to hold the belts until Mania next year for a Roman Rock showdown.
Is Cody the next guy?
Cody's the next guy for one of the belts. Roman's not going to have both championships going in the next Mania. So I think Cody does get one of those belts.
Because
And I think that makes sense.
because admittedly, and I told you, I took 17 years off between 02 and 19. I didn't watch Cody's run in real time back in early 2000s. Obviously, knowing what I know now, mid Carter at best. All that.
At that time, yeah, 100%.
Right. His stock went way up in the last 3-4 years. Going to AEW, and of course how that went on.
Yeah, the involvement with the Bullet Club. Yeah, he really made a name for himself internationally. For sure.
I think WWE has to strike the iron while it's hot now. He's over the crowd now. They love him, so strike iron while it's hot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they will. I think that they knew that. That's kind of one of the reasons why they pulled him back in, was just for that reason. Like Vince is a money guy, and he sees the dollar signs in Cody Rhodes right now.
Right. All right. Let's talk about AEW real quick. I got this. I saw this thing earlier on social media.
This will be the first time I talked about AEW in a while, and I co-host a wrestling podcast. No, I'm just kidding. That's a subtle shot at Jim Neese, who's probably listening right now. Sorry, Jim.
We hope you listen to it. I'm sure. No. Safe to say you're the AEW mark of the 5.
I'm not. No. I enjoy AEW probably more so than 2 to 3/5 of the show, but I try to be the Impact apologist of the show.
Okay, you go deeper than that then. Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I give them the benefit of the doubt. It costs me $1 a month to subscribe to their stuff on YouTube, and so I try to give them a fighter's chance.
I really want to dive more into like the Impact and New Japan and all that stuff, but to me the problem is I don't want to. I don't have time.
Yeah, it is very time consuming for sure.
And you're a parent too. On top of that, you're man. Same here. I don't have time to do it, and I have other interests besides wrestling. I love basketball. I love football.
Right. I mean, I watch a lot of soccer. I watch baseball. I watch basketball, football. So I mean, yeah, it's to dedicate more than it's a lot of DVRing of the wrestling shows and a lot of fast forwarding too, honestly.
I mean, right now in 2022, I think I've watched less than 3 episodes of Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, or Rampage combined.
I'm probably right there with you, honestly. I watched a few episodes leading up to Mania, and the after Mania, and that's kind of about it. The extent of it.
WWE does a good job though placing, product placement. They at least make it okay. You miss a show, you're going to know what happened.
Yeah.
YouTube, whatever it may be. AEW not as good as WWE.
Right.
But I think a lot of it too. I said about I did this, I said on this podcast a couple weeks back that I think a lot of it too the fact that unlike WWE where USA needs them or Fox mostly needs them, TNT, the AEW needs TNT and TBS. They're the new kid on the block. They need those
right. Especially right now as we get into the heart of the NBA season, for sure.
Oh yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons why they don't do a good job with at least they don't put up as much product into what's going on or recaps as much as WWE does. But Tony Khan, where are you on Tony Khan? Because Tony Khan to me is an enigma. Yeah. I like the guy, but then he does dumb shit. Or he says, where are you on Tony Khan?
Yeah, I've kind of been out on Tony for a little bit now. I think initially when they were trying to take the subtle shots and everything, it made sense because they were the new kid on the block trying to make a name for themselves. But after some time, it just the shtick kind of wore off. It got old. it was like, all right, we get it, you know. And they've constantly tried to build themselves, and Tony has tried to build AEW as a different kind of company, but every move that they make has just kind of been a similar move to what we've seen in the past from WWE. So they're not really setting themselves apart like they were initially, you know, trying to be the super indie federation. They're not that anymore. And that's fine. I mean, that's not a sustainable type of company. We've seen that in the past. So I understand it, but to continue billing yourself as something different and then kind of giving us a similar product, I think does him a disservice, especially when he tries to come out and talk about how different he is.
No, I think he has a really, really big self-worth problem. I know it's because he's super, super rich. He hasn't had to earn money in his life because he woke up rich, like Vince. Vince actually, where's that? Honestly,
Yeah.
But there's reports now that I want to read this piece from an article that I saw today for the listeners here real quick to get an idea what we're talking about here with Tony Khan, because I believe right now the honeymoon's over. I think ever since WrestleMania, it's been kind of weird in the AEW circle with just the way him and others have been talking about their company and whatnot. So we'll read this real quick. An agent with the WWE told us on Friday night that WWE believed Tony Khan was losing it and revealed to us that the internal belief in WWE is that AEW could be in trouble following the Discovery Warner Media merger. The source told us that at least one AEW supporter was on board during the process, with 2 Discovery executives being against the violence and blood and guts seen on AEW Dynamite since its debut. Whether or not this will affect AEW television remains to be seen. Wrestling Public also has learned over the weekend that multiple talents under contract with Impact Wrestling discussed Impact looking sideways at Tony Khan following his recent tweets. This once again could highlight a tear in the once positive relationship between AEW and Impact Wrestling. A lot of shots here at Tony Khan lately. The big swole thing, just the way he comments on social media, kind of out of pocket a little bit at times. His love for the business and the company. I will never take that away from him. But he has a major self-awareness problem, and I feel like if he's not careful, this can go downhill quickly.
I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment, but at the same time, we saw that early on with Vince, and we saw that with Ted Turner. So I think if anything, that if it could be a warning shot, I don't think he's at the level where he's going to be losing a lot. He might lose some talent here or there. He's already started to, and we've seen that. Obviously, I mean, Cody is a massive loss, whether they want to say that or not, it is. So I think there is some truth to that. And there's certainly, at the same time, you're talking to executives in rival companies who are always going to take what the other owners of companies do with a grain of salt. So, obviously Impact is going to be wary of what they see out of Tony Khan, just like they were with what they saw out of Vince, just like Vince was with what he saw to Ted Turner. So I don't think it's necessarily a huge deal, but it is something for sure to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm rooting for AEW. It's good to have an alternative.
It's nice to have, yeah. I mean, WWE, WCW weren't as good as they were until they started competing with each other.
Yeah, I think
competition's great. We've seen that to the lesser cards too. I mean, Ring of Honor, New Japan pushed each other, and the fans were the benefactors of that. And just like we were when AEW first came out. I mean, we saw WWE kind of be the best it's been in a while, and now they've been kind of complacent too. You can look at NXT 2.0 and see that they're just not trying as hard as they once were.
Right. Do you think he should take a step back from social media, from Twitter, or?
Probably wouldn't hurt. In the age of social media, I don't think anyone would be remiss if they took a step back from any type of social media, especially Twitter, the most toxic of all social media networks.
Of course, absolutely. I mean, we're both active on there. You see it ourselves. One more thing, let you go. One more thing. You wanted to comment on the Will Smith Chris Rock situation from 2 weeks ago. It's
I
still
did.
it's still a topic. It's still a big topic.
For whatever reason, it's still being talked about.
Your thoughts?
It's admittedly, I am a Will Smith fan, so I've obviously Philly guy. I'm gonna root for him, but Fresh Prince fan, Bad Boys fan, Men in Black fan. So I've always been a fan of what Will Smith has done. And so for me, looking at what the Academy is trying to do in terms of, while you're suspended for 10 years, to see them try to take the high stance at this point when we've seen the number of sexual predators who've won awards and they've said nothing about it is certainly telling. For all the people who were offended or appalled or shaken or whatever word they wanted to use to describe how the Will Smith slap impacted them, I think that's just kind of a show. And it's unfortunate because it's from some people that I used to think highly of, like Jim Carrey saying that is like, come on, man. Like
Jim Carrey's kind of lost the last couple of years. Let's be real. I love. By the way, I saw Sonic Hedgehog this part 2. I didn't see the first one a couple of years ago. So part 2 of my kids for their birthday last Friday. He's fantastic in that role.
Yeah, he's great. And we've seen him have some fun with the presenters in the past too. And not to a violent stage, but again, like to continue saying Will Smith assaulted Chris Rock is what bothers me, I think, more than anything. Like if the word assault, I think is the incorrect word to use in all of this, and that word being used so often, I think, is what's made this a bigger deal than I think it absolutely was when all was said and done.
You can be racially influencer too. You talk about,
I would say so.
Just you talk about how other people when the Oscars did years back, mostly white, if not all white, alleged predators, whatever, not getting their, slap on the wrist, maybe, and Will is taking it on the chin here.
And at no point has he denied any wrongdoing. At no point, he owned up to it.
Right.
And I think that the apology was sincere. I don't think it was a forced thing. I think the joke, and this is my biggest thing throughout all of this, because people are like, oh, well, now comedians can't say anything, and what happened to roasting and whatnot. To me, if you're going to a roast as a comedian and you are going after the physical appearance as how you're going to make fun. Like anyone can go to a roast and be like, hey, look at Fatso over here. Did you enjoy the buffet today, Fatty? And they'll get some chuckles. But if you're going for those as the laughs, like that's the low-hanging fruit. And if that's what you rely upon to get laughs overall, not a great comedian, in my opinion. And I think Chris Rock is better than that as a comedian. I honestly do.
And that's the reason I said I'm not a fan of Chris Rock. I've been saying for years I never liked Chris Rock for that exact reason you said.
Yeah, we've seen Chris Rock stand up in the past, and it's been funny. But if you're going to an award show, and obviously everyone knows jokes are made at the expense of people there, but it's not always going to be the physical appearance jokes. And so that's why I've been annoyed from the start with comedians should be protected. Sure, but comedians also have to know that if you're going after the low-hanging fruit, you have to take what comes at you at some point.
Like I said, what Will did was wrong, but I didn't feel sorry for Chris Rock. Let's be real here.
Right.
It is, so anyway. All right, plug away, buddy.
All right, yep. So you can catch me on Thursdays. It's at 3 Count Thursday Wrestling Podcast. We talk WWE, sometimes AEW if Jim watched it that week. I try to give Impact plugs as often as I can. It's rare, admittedly. And beyond that, you can listen to me at WizWit. We talk Philly sports about once a month right now, just because it's kind of the lull. We're in baseball season. We're gearing up for the draft. So once football season kicks off, that's when we kind of turn it up a bit. And then you can hear me again. What is it? April? So April of 2023 on the Earnestly Speaking podcast, that is probably when I will make my triumphant return.
By the way, I'll give Jim this much. For all the critical he gives AEW, he does watch it. So
He does.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of, like,
Probably more so than I do, honestly.
oh, no, well, he's have kids anyway. You know,
Right.
no, you have, like, podcasters and writers and stuff who criticize this company, that company, but they don't watch it. They watch the product. So what are you doing?
Right.
At least he's watching the product and actually investing time into it to at least give a critique. I'll give that. I always told him that. At least you watch it. So I know that don't watch it and they want to critique it all the time. So
yeah.
But anyway, good job, Matt.
All right. Yep. Until next time.
That was awesome. Good job, Matt.